Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Perceive 2021. Please give a warm welcome to our own Michael Tolbert, a data asset manager at Clarifai, who will be speaking about tools and best practices for optimizing data labeling operations. Welcome to our stage.
Hi, welcome to Clarifai's Perceive 2021 conference. The name of this session is Tools and Best Practices for Optimizing Data Labeling Ops. I hope to be your guide and your shepherd through some tips and tricks that we've learned over the years, as well as to give you a nice overview of some of the tools that we've created and that we're sort of working on. For some background and context, my name is Michael Tolbert, and I am the data asset manager here at Clarifai, which means that I handle the logistics and oversee most, if not all, of our data labeling exercises, as well as sort of facilitating the output and the distribution of those annotations. It's a highly cross-functional role, and it lies at the center of pretty much everything we do here at Clarifai, because data lies at the center of everything we do here at Clarifai. I work closely with our product engineering teams to better understand how to build the tools necessary to manage and complete some of these projects. I work with our customer teams to help relay those market signals. And I even work with our customers and clients to help turn their unstructured data into something that's usable for achieving their machine learning goals and their business goals. However, today, I'm excited to be a part of our 2021 Perceive conference and to be your guide. So let's get to it, shall we? So for those of you familiar with the Clarifai platform, this is sort of the landing page. So you have your account, and then in your account, you have these applications. And so for a specific application, this one being the Perceive application, my demo app, this is what your landing page looks like. You'll see this is universal across these pages. So, well, these can be changed, but the spaces are the same. So the created date, the general workflow, or the base workflow, which you can change, which is probably discussed more in another session, default language. So this would be the way you sort of communicate with our API, and also the way you exchange information with your sort of coworkers or people who share the app using these API keys. And then this space here is collaborators. This is where you can invite people to work on models with you or work within applications with you. Specifically for our purposes, you can invite your labeling team to using this collaborator function. And what that'll do is sort of limit the scope of the things they're able to do. And so with all scopes, you can basically have a partner on this, a full partner in your application. And with limited scopes, you can designate what people are able to do. So it's specifically labeling, specifically training, specifically adding or moving inputs, things like that. But going back to the task at hand, I think one of the most important places to start is by defining your project. And so I'm going to move over to our labeler screen here. This is just a demo app, but we'll go through it. I'd say in the simplest terms, the goal of a data labeling project is to take something that was previously without structure or order and apply it. Internally, we define unstructured data as that the human brain is good at, but computers are not. So that's images, videos, text, things like that. I think at higher levels, you have some data that does have structure, so like a contract, but you're sort of looking to further refine it and gather more insights. These are all things that machine learning models are sort of useful to do in like steps, right? Sending steps. So starting at the very beginning, we're going to look at task creation. So this is a task I've already created. I'm going to move this down a bit. Hopefully that's not jarring. Yeah, so task creation. This is our task creation page. I think it's a very important step, if not the most important, which I think I also said about defining your project, but you know what I mean. The task creation process is how you set your labeling team up for success, and ultimately how you allow your organization to get the most out of the data provided. This includes creating a detailed instruction, a set of instructions, providing relevant examples, and considering what edge cases and potentially confusing inputs a labeler might encounter. In my experience, this is an often overlooked part of the process for an organization or a task manager. And it's seemingly because you're expecting the labeling team to have the same goals as your larger organization or client, you're also expecting them to have the same basic knowledge about your project. So basically it's taking some information that you have, contextual information, for granted. the ability to create a document that contains a reasonable amount of pre-research, basically any knowledge you need to transfer just to get started. So it could be basically car types or something like that. Just something that gives the labeling team a sort of frame of reference is a very important first step. So yeah, it's pre-research, it's instructions that give a clear and detailed explanation of how to use the tools, right? And so with this, when I send out labeling tasks, what I do is say, well, these are the buttons that you use, obviously to label, but here are some tips. Here are some stuff that we've added. So you'll see when I show you the labeling screen, how to zoom and how to invert colors, things like that, just to help you get the most out of each input. And then so when developing these documents, I think it's really important that you take off your data scientist hat or your project manager hat. And what you really want to do is put on your teacher hat. Sorry, I got Slack message. Put on your teacher hat, just because you want to, stow all that contextual knowledge that you have. And luckily, if you're a writer or an editor, because then it'll be that much better. Okay, so I'm going to just move through this document a bit. Task name, find all the hogs. That'll make more sense once you see the data I'm working on. So here you can put, like I said, you want to make some detailed instructions. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to do just a varying array of instructions just to give you an idea of the things that are possible. So simple classification, you can say confirm the image has hogs or not. Okay. Another option, please draw bounding blocks for each hog in the image. Okay, so this is just two of the options you can do using Clarifai's platform. Simple classification, do bounding boxes, right? So now let's move on to the found in each image, right? And so now we're thinking more about polygons and masks. Give me the most specific outlines of those objects within each of these images. Additionally, you have the option to do video, right? So let's say, please indicate each period that a hog is present in the video. These are just for example. We're working with images today, but good to know. What else could we do? And I suppose you could draw a bounding box around each of the hogs, please. Track them throughout the videos. All right, so now we're getting into interpolation and tracking, things like that. So this is, again, just a list of different types of instructions, sort of starting points for you. Of course, you'd want to add some information, some examples of what does a hog look like, things like that. I'm going to keep it simple here. We're going to do the concepts. Keep it to concepts. Input source will do all inputs, which is just all the images that are in the app. I can make a subset of them or using some saved searches, however I choose to divide it. But for, again, the purposes of this, we're just going to do all concepts or all inputs. And now I've created some concepts previously. So if I was doing confirm if there's a hog, basically, yes, no. But for this demo, we'll do, is there a hog present? If so, use this. If there's not a hog present, right, but there are other animals, use this. And if there are no animals present, say it's just a picture of the skyline, then we'll use the no animal. What I mentioned earlier about the workers, those collaborators, I mean, this is where you would be able to add your stuff. which I wouldn't have to do because I'm already in this app. But this is where you would do that, and this is where you would specify the scopes, right? So these are all the things that I'm able to affect in this application. So close out of that. And before I go too far, going back to this taxonomy, because this is a very important part. Often your taxonomy will start to reveal itself. You'll notice patterns in the data that you want to flesh out, and alternatively, sometimes you'll be presented with data and then forced to find the patterns, right? Both of these happen regularly. The combination of providing thoughtful instructions and a well-defined taxonomy gives your team the best opportunity to provide meaningful annotations, and in turn gives you the best chance to build a model to solve your use case. So all that means is be thoughtful about the taxonomy. And it's also be thoughtful about the instructions. Hog, no hog, hot dog, not a hot dog, right? But what if, again, there is not a hog in the photo, but there's a dog and a cat? Is it more useful for you to know that there is not a hog, or that there are other animals present, they are just not the animals you're looking for? Is it more useful for you to know that there are no animals present in this photo, or just not a hog? So just be more thoughtful about the way you start to think about the taxonomy. It helps you as you start to work through that data. A taxonomy that's not truly reflective of what you're trying to solve is only going to waste your time and resources and money, to be honest. So going back to the collaborators, I'm going to add another account here. So I'll add myself. I'm the account owner, and I'll add this account, which is just another internal account. Let's see. Okay, and then I'll select the strategy here. So the strategy is just basically how these two workers are going to work together to label this list of inputs, these inputs. And so full just means that every worker will see every input. If I have 1,000 inputs, that means each worker is going to get 1,000. Partition, on the other hand, means that it's divided. And so keeping it at 1,000 inputs total, each worker will get 500 inputs. Simple. And of course, as you start to go up, so the partition will divide according to the number of people present. So if I had 5 workers, that would be 200 inputs each. And full will remain the same. It's always going to be each worker sees all the inputs. I guess now's a good time to talk about building a workforce, which I think is sometimes taken for granted. You think, oh, it's labeling, anyone can do it. And I don't believe that to be true. I think it takes people who are detail oriented, who maybe have an eye for photography. It's just, there are minor things, like not minor, but there are things like every job, I think every role, that are important to success, to the project success. And historically, there have been a lot of challenges around the process of labeling. But for both finding workers and sort of developing tools, I think Clarifai has done a fantastic job, which you'll see throughout this conference. This tool is built with the feedback of task managers, data scientists, data labelers, project managers, data creators. I should have really turned off all these. And input from every conceivable perspective to create what's evolved into an industry-leading tool, a tool that makes the core functions of task creation, task management, and the task review process very easy to understand. And so the addition of things like collaborators, which I've shown you here, AI assist, grid review, and the ability to then train and evaluate your model, all within an easy to use interface, drastically reduce the complexity of building and maintaining your machine learning models. And if I'm being honest, we're getting better at it every day. So again, welcome to Clarifai as Perceived. Another important thing about your sort of workforce as you're thinking about who to involve and how to sort of align them is the incentives performance. I think there are very obvious incentives like pay, bonuses, things like that. But let's see. I think one that becomes the bigger the team, the sort of more inherent in the project itself is this idea of competition. Sort of like a gamification or a ranking system. Those are some very old and proven things that tend to drive results. There's a couple of ways you can do this simply, and Clarifai provides a lot of the data that makes it easier to do that. And so you can do something like the most labels in the amount of time. That's something you can track using Clarifai's platform, or the fastest complete a given set of labels with a certain level of accuracy, right? So yeah, those are all tools that I'll show you in on our stats page that are very useful if you decide to go this route, you know. Yeah, using stats on Clarifai's label tool, you can come up with some competitions that you prefer, but I think it's important to note that the tools are available. And let's see. And finally, I think, yeah, holistically, you want to align your team behind your goals, which is easier said than done. When possible, it's nice to have a team that works in-house, a team capable of getting very familiar with the project and the goals. We at Clarifai have found that an in-house team can do up to 10x of what an outsourced team can do. So, and that's just the proximity and it's the knowledge transfer and it's the ability to ask questions and things like that. But that's not always possible. Good help is hard to find, and we know that. So I think what you want to do is spend time building partnerships or take the time up front to have those calls and set up those communication channels, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, just to set your team up for success and your project. Getting back to this, we're going to do the worker strategy. I'm going to do full, yeah, just so we can get through it. Review strategy, that's for the demo, I mean. Review strategy, we're going to do manual. These are important, and we'll talk about these in just a second as I start doing some labeling. But just for this page, none means nobody's going to review it. It's just going to be auto success, which is important if it's you. If you're looking at, if you upload the data and you task yourself with labeling it, then you can reasonably trust yourself, right? Manual is if you're working on it together with a group or a team, and someone's a designated reviewer and they just need to look through everything to make sure that everyone's up to par. You can separate this by worker. And so you could say worker 1 is not maybe understanding the instructions, whereas workers 2 through 5 are, and their work looks good. So you send worker 1 his work back or their work back, and then you start a dialogue about what needs to change. And then consensus is the most hands-off for the reviewers. Basically, with the combination of say full, it means every worker will look at every input and provide an annotation. And then where there's overlap or redundancy, those annotations will be marked success eventually. I'm going to use manual here just to show off the review process. And select reviewer, this is maybe a bit of cheating. I'm going to just select myself as well. Okay. And here you have enable AI assist, which is going to come up later in a different session. But this is where you really start to see a lot of gains when you are working with a labeling team, because it's going to prompt them. It's going to say, based on a model that you've already provided or workflow, it's going to say this, is this, and then it's more so just the worker themselves selecting it is that thing or it's not that thing. Very useful tool. So I'm going to create this task and then we're going to move on. Perfect. All right, so the assign to me tab. This is where you'll find the task as a worker, for which in the case of this demo, I am both the task owner, the task worker, and the task reviewer. A man of many hats. But this is where you'll find the task sent to you. This is the one I created previously, but this is the one I just created. Find all the hogs. And we'll just do about 5 of these just to get an idea of what's going on. We've discussed some of the tools and techniques that you can use to set up your labeling job, and I just want to give you a brief overview. I think this is also important because to help set up your job most efficiently, you want to familiarize yourself with the tools. I, of course, am familiar with this tool, but I think as a labeling operations manager, you want to know the intricacies of the tools that your labelers are using, and that way you can know what is and isn't possible. It also helps you better understand what the team is going to go through during the task, which will help you better provide instructions. So, like I said, I'm just going to walk you through a very short, maybe 5 images to give you an idea of how this tool works. Move my face again down here. Okay, so this first image, not a hog, but it is an animal. I'm just going to put not hog and hog. I think also I should tell you some of the useful things on this screen. So there's an instructions page here, which is, these are just the instructions that I threw together during the early demo, but it's a useful way for you as a labeler to keep a task at hand in mind. Here's a place for metadata. This would typically be added by, say, the owner or the data owner. And these are just things you may need to reference or ways to set up safe searches later on, right? So stuff that you don't want to make necessarily concepts, but is important. This is brightness, simple photo editing tool, contrast, and inversion, or hue, I believe this is hue. Here's zoom and here's pan. Again, these are all basic photo editing tools, but they're to help the labeler navigate through the inputs and to sort of get the most out of them. All right, so moving back to labeling. This is a cat, not a hog. I'm going to put not hog and submit the input. These are people rafting. Again, not a hog. Dog, not a hog. Here's a few hogs in there. And this is cattle, also not a hog. So I'm going to go ahead and click not hog. I think just to show you that there are hogs in here. Let's see if I can find one. Okay. And just find it. Although it doesn't change the outcome, but it would make me feel better. And I can't, but you get the point. And so I did 5 out of the 2,800 available. I'm going to exit this, and then we're going to move on to the review process. All right, so the review process. All right, so you'll see this tab here for review. And so this is where we're going to jump right in. Had I done more inputs, you'd see more labeled, a greater percentage, but I only did 5, so it's basically 0% is to complete it. We go this. And so again, what we're doing here, let's see. That is a screen that we're actually phasing out. So, frick not. And so basically what this is showing is, because I picked not hog for all of these, it's filtered by the concept by default, sort of. But this is a grid review page, which makes reviewing so much faster. It's so much easier because of this, like the option here to sort of filter by concept or the grouping. You can quickly scan through these, see that all of these do not have a hog in it, and then me as the user, you can approve it. So this is a this is an example of our manual review. And we all know the review process is generally the most arduous part of this entire cycle. While that is still true, it's a bit of a bottleneck. I think the review process that we have make it much simpler. Give me one. And so, yes, the manual review process. As I showed before, when setting up the task, you can choose manual or consensus. The manual gives your reviewer, again, an opportunity to sort of peruse through the images to see what's been done, to notice any patterns, and then to either approve the worker's work or send them back, as opposed to the consensus review, which kind of relies on the workers themselves to overlap, to have some redundancy, and then the reviewer can still choose whether to accept or not accept those invitations, but it does relieve some of the bottleneck of the reviewer having to look at everything or to work on those patterns, or work on finding those patterns themselves. I think these are all pretty good. So I'm just going to go ahead and approve. Let's see. So I'm going to refresh. And what we're going to want to see is that those have been reviewed and thus taken out of the queue. There we go. And so there's nothing left here to review because, or there's no option here to review because they've been reviewed. And so that is a win. Gonna move on. Okay. And then I think, so now looking at, this is another page called Explorer. And what's great about this page is that after sort of reviewing those annotations, refresh here again, get an updated count. Yes, and this is from a previous example, but what you get here is basically, oh, and these are all the hogs. You get an opportunity here to see your annotations or the annotations you'll be using for model training and things like that before you start training the model. It gives you a great opportunity to sort of visualize, again, any patterns or anything that may be useful in sort of further developing that model. And one other useful thing. So we click into an input. This was just labeled by me. We're gonna wait till those annotations show up. Right. And so here you see it's got the annotation non-hog. It's got, when you click this number or this button, you'll see who the user that made the annotation, which again is me. And then you can filter by that. So with the more people you have on the team, the more, of course, annotations you'll get per image and per input. And then all that information kind of shows up here, along with the status, which is going to be very useful just to know what's still pending review, what's awaiting consensus, and then what's success. And by success, that's how you know what'll be used in the training. There are some other tabs here that will be discussed in other sessions. What I want to show you is this app workflow. And so here is where you can also, so remember when I talked about AI Assist, this is, yeah, related in that it is another model that is providing predictions. And so these are just some of the general models predictions. They are not useful for the model that I would be building around these hogs, but they are just additional sort of suggested annotations, if you will. And next up, I think, so this is pretty much all the labeling to model building up till the model training portion. Going back to talking about Labeler, I think the tool itself has got a lot of, sort of other useful parts. Because it's such a small demo, it's kind of hard to see, some of these other statistics and how great all this stuff kind of works together. But I think what's more important about sort of managing your labeling operations is, one, creating the task, assigning the task, reviewing the task, and then getting those further quality metrics about the labelers. The only thing that I have not really mentioned that I think is a vital part of your labeling process, and it's a vital part of probably all of the sort of working relationships you're going to have, is communication. And so for all of the Clarifai platform abilities and labeling and training and evaluating and deploying, something that we haven't fully finished integrating is a way of communicating with your labelers, or having your labelers communicate with you. That's something that we're working on, and the collaborators function is the first step in the acknowledgement that these models are the work of many, many people, and that we're all working together, working across time zones, borders, times of day, and more. But I think when it comes to managing a labeling task, you want to have a way to communicate with your team leads and with your labelers more directly. You want them to have a means to communicate with you. You want them to be able to ask you questions, um, you know. And so I think one important tool, tip, trick is to overcome that. You're going to need to use, or you should start using what I like to think of as like these shared documents. And so the very obvious ones are like Google Docs, right? It's something that you can both update in real time, sort of respond to with comments, all that stuff on. It's something that we are working to build into our platform. But until then, just to get your task and your operations sort of moving, it's something you're going to want to use. Of course, there's email, there's Slack, or other communication platforms. But I think the other benefit to having the shared doc is that it's a living doc, and the history is going to be kept there. You can also turn that into a PDF, or you can print that, or you can download that. And so it's just useful to have that information, those questions, those responses, those thoughts, as something that you can share back and forth across the team, and then with other teams as you continue your labeling. It's on our roadmap, and I can't wait until actually next Perceive to be able to show it to you. But for now, I think it's important to remember to set yourself up for success by creating those lines of communication back and forth in both synchronous and asynchronous. So that is about it for me here. We're going to go back to a little slide deck, very short, spend most of this time doing demos. I do want to just quickly plug that we do, aside from offering Scribe, just Scribe Labeler tool, we do have a sort of data labeling service, labeling as a service. I think you can reach out to anyone at Clarifai to find out more information about that, particularly sales or marketing teams. Yeah, and I hope to talk to you soon. So thanks again for coming to Perceive, brought to you by Clarifai. And thanks for stopping by to hear about some tools and best practices for optimizing data labeling operations. Hopefully they were helpful. You got to see some of the amazing tools that we're building. You'll find more insight into some of the tools mentioned here and some of our talks. And so make sure you check them all out. Have a great day. Enjoy the rest of your 2021 Perceive conference. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Michael. It was a pleasure. A big round of applause from our virtual audience. We will see you at the next session.